Capcom has reclaimed control of their hack and slash video game series Devil May Cry. I have to admit, I enjoyed the Ninja Theory-led reboot from 2013, but many fans did not. I can say that despite liking DMC, it did lack a certain magic that Capcom developed games usually have. Apparently, Capcom felt the same way because now they have given us a proper sequel to the series, Devil May Cry Part 5. Dante and Nero are back, and this time they are joined by a mysterious new character, V. The story finds Dante and company fighting a demon king who has caused an apocalypse on Earth and raised evil tree roots into the world. The story twists and it turns, and eventually it is revealed that there is more than meets the eye going on. It's a good story, if not a little too fragmented, as the timeline jumps forward and backwards from stage to stage. This fragmented storyline also affects the gameplay. With 3 playable characters, Dante, Nero, and V, no sooner do you complete a stage with one character and find yourself controlling another on the next. All 3 characters have expansive upgrades that can be purchased, and it makes it hard to purchase and learn one character's abilities when you are constantly being pulled in another character's direction with each level. There is a training room you can enter to practice combos, and it's much needed because it's hard to learn the new moves when you have a horde of demons kicking you in the face. Dante can switch between multiple firearms and melee weapons, including dual pistols, rocket launchers, swords, elemental nunchucks, and even a freaking motorcycle. In addition to that, he has 4 different fighting styles that return from the previous games. The gunslinger style will enhance his ranged weapon attacks, while trickster will allow him to dodge faster. He has a style that allows him to guard and counter, and an offensive style based on dealing extra melee damage. In addition to his devil trigger from the previous games, he now has an additional, more powerful trigger that you unlock near the end of the game. Nero has many similarities to Dante, but lacks the different weapons and fighting styles. Instead, Nero can use his robotic arm to shoot out a line that grabs smaller enemies and pulls them close, or in the case of bigger enemies, pulls Nero towards them. He also possesses a series of Devil Breaker arms that each have different abilities, such as a flying fist that swarms around hitting enemies, a buster arm that grabs, slams, and then throws enemies, and even an arm that can slow down time. Nero can also rev up his sword like an engine and do increased damage that way. At the end of the game, a character evolving ability is given to the player to use. V is the newcomer here, and was easily my favorite character despite a few problems I had with him that I'll touch on shortly. He uses summoned animals to do his fighting for him. Once an enemy's life has been reduced to a fatal level, he has to swoop in and deal the finishing blow. V's bird, Griffin, handles range attacks, and he can fire lightning, while Shadow, a shape-shifting jaguar, provides the melee attacks. Once his devil trigger meter builds up, V can summon Nightmare, a giant hulking golem that can deal heavy damage and shoot explosive lasers. Where Dante and Nero feel very similar, V feels unlike anything else in the series, and I applaud the developers' initiative to create something new. All 3 characters are deep and satisfying, but as you switch back and forth, you can't help but wish that you had the option to play any character on each of the stages, or stay with the one you like and try to master their combat moves. I understand for story reasons certain characters have a certain path, but I don't understand why you can't choose whoever you want when you replay previous missions. A couple of missions do allow you to choose who to play with, but they are few and far between. On top of that, Dante doesn't even come into the story until the last third of the game. The focus is put clearly on Nero and V. Considering that Dante himself is the protagonist of the series, it feels weird to have him sidelined for most of the game.
I have a duty to see this through. Well, that's all you had to say, Mr. Poetry. I'm gonna go my way, and you guys can go yours.
The level design is very dated, and honestly the stages here feel like they are straight out of a game from 20 years ago. They're very linear, filled with invisible walls, and limited exploration options. Occasionally a path will lead to a power-up or a secret mission, but for the most part you just move forward. Near the end of the game, a stage presents you with actual traps to avoid, but it feels like too little too late. On top of the lacking design, most of the game either takes place between a broken empty city or demonic tunnels and ruins. There's very little variety to be found, and what is here, while looking good enough graphically, isn't very interesting. The waves of various enemies are fun to fight, and the character designs are nice. Bosses, usually the highlight of these type of games, range from uninspired to cheap as hell. While it's just a few of them, these baddies will relentlessly attack you with overpowered abilities and almost non-existent tails. If you played them over and over, you might be able to eventually counter all of their attacks, but on the first few attempts, they are brutal damage sponges that will toss you around like a rag doll. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not the best when it comes to hack and slash games, but I think I'm sufficiently skilled at least. A few of these bosses thrashed me multiple times, and eventually I had to resort to using the gold gem item that allows you to return to life, just to beat them. Multiple attempts had revealed no real strategy besides dodging around constantly and hoping for the best. The final boss teleports around so fast, it's very frustrating, and in a long list of Capcom boss fights, I felt like a few of these were some of the cheapest and most annoying I had ever faced off against. My major issue with the game is that it feels unpolished and rushed. V's gameplay suffers the most. His finishing move is designed to warp him to the targeted enemy and deal the finishing blow. A lot of the time it won't even work properly. Sometimes he will warp through obstacles as intended, and sometimes he gets stuck on the slightest bump in scenery. I don't think Capcom intended for the player to have to try pulling off the finishing move 4 or 5 times in a row before it actually works. V's most important weapon, his cat shadow, also has questionable design. Sometimes he attacks the enemy you're locked onto successfully, and sometimes pressing his attack button causes him to appear halfway across the stage and attack the thin air. Sometimes it doesn't even work at all. V is still my favorite character, but playing with him always had at least a slight element of frustration. There's also a stage-ending bug on stage 13, something I don't ever think I've seen in a Capcom game. It becomes unable to advance through the stage, and restarting the checkpoint won't fix the problem. Eventually I just started the entire stage over, and then I was able to advance. A quick search online revealed other people had witnessed this as well. I might understand this in a low-budget indie title or a preview version of the game, but this is the full-priced retail release, and I expect more from Capcom. I can't help but feel like DMC5 was rushed out in order to meet the same quarterly earnings period as Resident Evil 2. Clearly a month or two more of development could have helped the game. Given that the Bloody Palace Arena mode is not going to be added to the game until a month after release, I think that speaks for itself. But I'm not saying Devil May Cry 5 is a bad game. Far from it. The issues I had with it may reduce the score a little bit, but there's still a fun time to be had. I feel like the people like me who just want to run through the game a couple times will find a lot of redeeming qualities about it. But really, this is a game made for the hardcore fans. The players who will master every combo and complete every difficulty. Those people will no doubt find a lot more value than the average player. Minus some needed polish and very dated level design, Devil May Cry 5 is a deep and enjoyable hack and slash. It's a shame the story focus has shifted away from Dante so much, but the addition of V brings a nice gameplay variety, although his buggy gameplay is a shame. With an unacceptable glitch shipped out on the final disc, and the arena mode still missing in action, I have to give the game a lower score than I otherwise would. I love Capcom, and I hate to see these slight missteps in an otherwise great experience, but it looks and runs good, and it plays good. There's a ton of combat depth for fans to master. Despite its issue, it still scores pretty high, but that score could have been even higher. Final score, 82.